welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. I am Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and joining me today is Chris Fetner. He's the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships with Waldom Electronics. We've interviewed a couple of people from Waldom over the last year. They're an interesting company, and so I appreciate the opportunity to speak to Chris today. Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And why don't I begin by allowing you to introduce yourself and your role there within Waldom?
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to share the Waldom model and really the things that we're bringing into the market. For our distributor partners out there. As you mentioned, I'm one of our vice presidents of strategic partnerships. What that really means is I work with some of our most key suppliers, along with their key distributors and therefore our customers, and really trying to bring efficiency and opportunity into the channel through those relationships that I'm building, programs that we're starting. And we'll talk about some of those programs through our master distribution model that we use to support the channel.
Yeah, and that's an important point there too. And I always want to make it with Waldom that you service the manufacturers and the distributors. You do not touch the EMS. We have a lot of clients who are EMS or viewers, so we'll try to weave in some advice for them in this as well, I hope.
Yeah, and that's a very critical part of the Waldom position in the market, because what folks need to understand is we're a neutral party. Right. And what that means for our distributor partners is they can share details with us, sales figures, potential projects that we're working on, and they can do that in confidence that I'm not going to meet them in that same customer 6 months down the road and compete for that business. We are completely neutral amongst suppliers as well as amongst the distributors. And that really gives those distributors confidence in working with us as we build programs together.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great distinction. Now, what I'd like to talk to you initially about here is your minimum order quantity reduction service. You know, I think that is probably resonates with a lot of people in this industry, especially North America, where a lot of it is the high mix, lower volume type manufacturing. So why don't you describe that program for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, we're really seeing a lot of activity in this area, especially after what we've all been through in the last couple of years with the supply chain crises. No one wants to repeat that. And we're all looking for ways to, maximize our sales, obviously, but also minimize our risk as we go into new projects. And that's a big part of what all of the Waldom solutions are built around. It's how do we bring efficiency into those sales, efficiency into our businesses, so we're all the most successful that we can be. Our MOQ solutions are truly geared around how do we right-size orders. From a supplier perspective, they have to run their factories in a stable environment at levels that are effective for them from a profitability standpoint, right? But when you look at this from a distributor perspective and potentially even that final customer, we really have to consider, how big or how appropriate is that business with the investment that's required. So in the Waldom distribution model, specifically around MOQs, what we're looking for is to support those distributors and allow them to purchase at the right size. When you think about our supplier partners, some of them have to purchase 50,000 produce 50,000 pieces at a time, for instance. But that potential customer may only be looking for 10,000 pieces. They can go through their distributor partner and access at those quantities that are really appropriate for their business, eliminating the risk of excess, minimizing their investment requirements, and really supporting that sale in an effective effective manner.
And is that so? Then you would actually be Waldom would be doing the purchasing on behalf of that distributor, and then that distributor would leverage that out. And the remaining, if it was 50,000 and they only took 10,000, that other 40,000 you could potentially sell to other distributors.
Exactly. So one of the important features of Waldom is we touch 2,500 distributors globally. We have the #1 reach in the world. So that reach allows us to really look at those components, at those factory mins, and compare them to that smallest pack size and understand what are the opportunities to sell those pieces and really get that material out into the market, get it reached get it stretched into customers
Yeah.
that are looking for that material.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And again, for the EMS, who are doing a lot of the high mix, low volume builds, MOQs is an issue, right? Constantly. And they're getting this. And how am I going to use this? And over the last few years, a lot of their money's been tied up in excess inventory anyway. So they're trying to see how can we flush that out? So for those, what they need to do is go work through their distributors to work with you.
Absolutely. And one of the things we did, quite honestly, during the pandemic is we worked with our distributor partners to integrate our inventory into their purchasing systems. So a lot of our top distributors have now built us in. They almost view us as another warehouse. Our true goal at the end of the day is for those distributors to really treat the Waldom inventory as an extension of their own inventory.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I'm thinking that on-hand availability of parts is crucial, right, to delivering this type of service. So speak to that and your inventory levels and what you kind of hold on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, let me take a little bit of a step back and just give you some perspective about Waldom in totality. Over the last couple of years, we've had a tremendous amount of growth. We're a $200 million annual company. But you take that $200 million, we have $400 million of inventory today. I believe by the end of 2023, we'll be closer to 500 million. But what's really important about that inventory is we have 215,000 unique SKUs. So when you think about that from the perspective of a distributor, that's a lot of access at quantities that are more accessible to those regional specialties. But even those platinum partners utilize the Waldom inventory to expand their own breadth of inventory. And then at the same time, now Waldom has it in stock. We've made the order, shipping, purchasing processes very automatic, very accessible for those distributors. And now we can support those sales with fast turnaround. You don't have a 16-week lead time. We're committed to, if we receive an order before 2:30 Central, we're going to ship that order same day.
Oh, wow.
And so that level of service that folks feel across this large inventory is a real significant advantage for those that fully utilize us.
Yeah. And you have your then obviously warehouses strategically located to support that.
Absolutely. We not too long ago expanded here in the US. So we have two large facilities, one in Rockford, Illinois, and a second in Georgetown, Ohio, just outside Cincinnati. Very strategically located near airports for UPS and FedEx and those guys. So that allows us that on-time delivery to really be efficient. In addition, we have a large facility in Europe, in Venlo, Amsterdam. Or near Amsterdam, excuse me. So we've got Venlo in Europe, and then we've got some cross docks and 3PLs across APAC region to support our customers globally.
And I noticed that the program also it referenced consultation with Waldom. So a distributor who didn't know how to do this necessarily to engage, you would help define a program for them. Is that how that works?
Absolutely. So we just recently redid our website in the first quarter. Really the goal there, make the inventory easier to utilize. So someone who's new to Waldom can very easily get a login information. Obviously we have to validate the distributor status with them because we are required and are committed to supporting only distributors. So we do some validation, but they can get that login usually within a few hours, 24 hours max. Get them logged in. They can then begin searching that inventory for the components they need. And we even can support all the way down to a credit card purchase.
Oh, wow. Now, I wanted to ask about a couple other programs that you have, but before I shift, let me just ask, is there anything else about the MOQ one that I didn't ask that you think needs to be mentioned?
Well, I just think it's really important to understand when you think about the MOQ solution, and we talked a little bit about an example where the factory MOQ was very large, but let me share with you a little bit of a real life example. We had one of our supplier partners come to us. They were really struggling out in the channel. They were having distributor partners challenged to invest because of the inventory risk. So we came in, we looked at these larger MOQs and developed really a process for evaluating those components and shrunk that investment quantity for distributors down to 25%. So if you think about it from a distributor standpoint, it's a lot easier and more efficient to invest at those levels and spread your investment amount across multiple part numbers to support their business. And here's where it really got interesting. So we took these parts, we gave the channel the access it needed, we eliminated that excess risk for both the distributor and the supplier. So we really brought some efficiency in for them. In addition, that end customer really felt that Waldom improved customer experience because they're getting support on the part they need. It's shipping fast. It's in the quantity they need. In our first launch, or in our first phase of their program, 70% revenue growth.
Wow.
Think about that for a minute and what the value of the entire channel is. We grew something that distributors weren't wanting to stock. We grew the revenue by 70%. 2-year growth rate of 30%.
Jeez.
Really strong numbers for that supplier on a part that they felt strongly that the channel should be purchasing, but that investment cost, that higher MOQ that was required to run the factory efficiently, was now available in quantity those distributors needed, and they felt those sales revenue pick up.
And that's, and that's what I like about your model, and also kind of, won't call it the mission, but one of the statements I saw when I look at Waldom is that you focus on making the supply chain more efficient and more profitable, right? So,
right.
And the example you just cited clearly demonstrates that.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot more interest from a lot of supplier partners coming out of the pandemic, out of supply chain crisis, because we're all looking for ways. How do we manage with a workforce that's reduced by 30%? There's no end in sight for that anytime soon. But you still got to run those factories. You still have to offer those products. But how do we do it more efficiently? And we're engaged with a number of suppliers now to really grow not only this MOQ solution program, but the other programs that we offer to help them really manage that factory efficiency and balance that with the channel needs.
It's interesting because, one of the terms that we've been discussing lately is that of increased collaboration within the industry, right? To solve, after all these years of highly competitive, and we've gone through a few years and some events beyond control that's almost forced that. And this is a great example of that, right? I mean, you're actually helping these distributors and their suppliers collaborate in a much more efficient way. And ultimately, I think the EMS companies benefit as well then.
Yeah, I'm always impressed to see, as I gain experience and history within the channel, how collaborative the entire supply chain is. Suppliers talking to distributors, distributors talking to the EMS folks, and really driving how do we all do this the best and make sure that we support all the way throughout the supply chain. Before I came to Waldom Electronics, I was in another industry, and I don't think we ever would have seen that type of discussion, knowing how we can all help each other throughout the supply chain.
Yeah. So let's talk about other special programs that you oversee and that help both of your customer sets. You have the slow moving excess inventory solutions, you have the long tail SKU solutions. And I know Waldom as a whole also has that whole where it's kind of the buy back piece, right? Where you bring it back in various ways.
Yeah.
Speak to any of those that you care to.
Yeah. So when you, I'll take that 30,000 foot approach again. When you look at the Waldom business model, it's really broken into two primary parts. Historically, we've been very well known for our support in the slow moving and excess inventory area. That's that offsetting purchase that you were mentioning.
Oh yeah.
But specifically within the stock or within that slow moving and excess inventory arena, we've got programs where distributors or even suppliers can take inventory that's not moving for them. Maybe a project ended early or demand changed. Or any myriad of things can happen to make that inventory not moving for the distributor. They'll come to Waldom. We've got programs where we'll do a revenue share with them as we sell it. Because of our reach, we touch more distributors and then get more access across the entire market. And we're able to sell parts that maybe they aren't selling for this particular distributor because they're in another arena and there's another piece of the market that has a demand for that product. We'll help get that product moved and return value on product that was that was in excess on their shelves.
Mhm.
One thing I will say, and this is something that I'm very passionate about, because material is excess for a distributor does not mean it's old. And I think that was a misnomer historically in the industry. When you look at Waldom's inventory, 60% of our parts are less than 2 years old.
Mhm.
If you take that breakdown, that Pareto of age of our stock, it matches with a lot of the platinum and premier distributors that are out there.
Mhm.
So excess doesn't necessarily mean old.
Yeah. No, and I had a good conversation with Waldom about that in a previous interview, and I think that's a very, very strong point. And the study that was done that kind of highlighted a lot of that, right, and kind of broke down that myth, so to speak. So, okay.
Absolutely. So you've got that half of the business. It's the historical, the excess inventory pieces, but there's an entire other half of the business. It's almost 60% of our total revenue comes from these master distribution programs. We talk a little bit about the MOQ solutions.
Mhm.
Another program that's really taking off for us is our low volume or long tail solutions. These are parts that when you look at the tail end of the life cycle, there's still good demand in the channel for them. There's still orders coming in, but they can be sporadic.
Mhm.
And maybe the lead time has increased because the orders aren't as consistent, because then the production in turn isn't as consistent. So you take those opportunities, and Waldom will come in and we'll stock those parts on the shelves at inventory levels that make sense for the entire channel, and then folks will have that readily access available through us.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, and it's, again, I reflect on the EMS companies I meet with, and especially in a lot of the industrial sectors, they do have products like you're talking about, where they're just, I think, like, locomotive things, right? That's an industry you're just not building on high volume.
Right.
You're doing it occasionally, right?
Yeah.
And when those parts, but when you need parts, you still need parts. And excellent point. Hey, listen, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I want to be respectful of our time too. With your position, kind of to reflect on how you see kind of the overall material supply chain playing out. We talked a little before we started here. My sense lately is, after 2 years of doom and gloom and all these horrendous stories, and the sky is falling, it's not as dire anymore, it seems like. Or is that because things have gotten better? I don't think they've fixed everything, but are people just kind of adjusting to this, and it's kind of an ongoing issue that needs to be managed? What's your sense?
Yeah, so I would agree with your sentiment that the situation is not as dire and the sky is no longer falling. What I would say is we're starting to see some stabilization. So if we rewind the clock 24 months ago, a lot of us couldn't get enough materials, and so orders were increased. The challenge was at the same time that we're all ordering more material, factories are still dealing with folks being out for COVID, workforce not coming back to the factories yet. So what we see now is those factories have started to rebound. And so production is up and coming up. It's not back to where it was, but it's certainly improving. So some of those orders where we've, increased our quantities, we started to deliver on that. So you're seeing some stabilization there. And then lastly, openly, we're seeing a little bit of softness in the market right now. We're all working through what that means. But when you look at those three pieces combined, I would say we're starting to stabilize and recover a little bit out there. So we're seeing some of those long extended lead times coming in a bit. Certainly not back to where we were pre-pandemic, but certainly pointed in the right direction.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that, for your insights on that. Before we go, though, I do want to ask you about, EDS. You attended EDS last week. I believe Waldom was a gold sponsor there as well. What were your impressions? What were some of the highlights for you?
Yeah, EDS is a fantastic event for Waldom. We really bring a strong presence there because we're unique in that, because of our master distribution model, we're the only company in the building that has both our suppliers and our distributor customers together. So we spend a lot of time working hand in hand, face to face throughout that week. And it was really a fantastic week. Really saw attendance spring back to levels pre-pandemic. A lot of friendly faces that we haven't seen for a while getting to work hand in hand. But really a productive week for everyone. It's a fantastic show, well put on there. Logistics are really key when you get that many people in one place, and it's always impressive. Before I started going to EDS, there were the stories of everyone talks about the elevators and the challenge that those can be. And there's been some really creative solutions, and you could see that in play this year outside of maybe one day, really efficiently moving of people. And what that really does for us is it allows me to see more customers. It allows me to see more suppliers and really have those interactions that we need. So we had a really full schedule. We're still getting back into the swing of things of being in the office, but really fantastic time with our partners out there.
Yeah, and that's good, and that's good to hear. But also, I think of Waldom too. I think, as we indicated at the beginning, you weren't as well known, and you're becoming a much better known company, and you're probably garnering a lot more interest at these shows as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. We really had to strategically plan our schedule out this year, and we really had to divide into a couple of teams so that we could support all the partners that we needed to see throughout the week, which is exciting for us. We're always really happy to get the time with our distributor partners and their executive teams and continue to share that Waldom model. And this year we really took it a step farther. I kind of walked you through a little bit of a case study earlier that for one of our programs. We spent a lot of time really educating our partners on both sides, both distributors and suppliers, about these programs and how they work and the power that they can have for their businesses.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. I'm a big fan of your model. Every time, I do an interview and then I go and I talk to some EMS, I always hear, who are these guys? How come I've never, and how can I? And that's why I always want to weave into this the idea that for EMS companies work through your distributors, they can certainly could leverage Waldom to your benefit, hopefully. So
yeah, absolutely. And we welcome it and reach out to us. We're happy to help and connect you to the right folks wherever we can.
Good. Well, Chris, I'm glad to have had the time to interview you. You're a great spokesperson for Waldom. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely, Eric. Thank you so much for your time and allowing me to share a little bit more about the Waldom business model with you.
No, thank you, sir. We do appreciate it. Thanks.
Have a great day.
You too.